Hey folks, getting ready to launch on Rocky Gorge Reservoir with Victor from Fish Everything.
What's going on, guys?
He's putting the Torqeedo Travel 1103 on there. You've been using this.
I have.
On some other Maryland reservoirs.
Yeah, it's been helping my fishing tremendously because, you know, without this, I can't get around the lake, can't hit as many spots. You know, I like to fish the big swim baits, and it comes down to covering a lot of water. So the more water that I can cover, the better chance I got of getting a really big bite at the end of the day. And the Torqeedo is allowing me to do that.
So tell me a little bit about your company and what you produce here. You got a couple of them there.
So I make mainly all big lures for now. That's kind of my deal. My bag is making big swim baits. All out of my garage shop here in Maryland. Make a bunch of different products, and I make whatever I need to be making to catch myself more fish, and then I sell it to the public and people can catch more fish on my baits. I make, you know, shad shaped glide baits, different colors, you know, bright ones for striped bass, you know, bone ones for dirty water, you know, really good looking shad ones for nice clear water. So we're going to be using today these gizzard shad colors. You know, we make lip swim baits, multi-piece lip swim baits. These are, you know, big crankbaits essentially. Make big topwater baits, big spook walk the dog style baits, even bigger crankbaits. Make wake baits. It's just a shallow running version of the other one, but make a lot of different baits, and just to try to fit different niche specific needs in your day on the water. And like I said, I just make whatever I need.
Where are most of your customers? What's your biggest customer base? I mean, I know you sell a lot here in Maryland, but I bet you have a lot.
California, Texas, and probably Massachusetts, actually.
Really?
Yeah, it's like
big swim bait.
Yeah.
Is it for the stripers?
No, it's for bass.
Really?
Yeah, they just have a really popular swim bait scene up there.
Yeah.
And they're very successful on it. Like, they catch a lot of fish, like well over 6-7 pounds out there in Massachusetts. It's a lot of they do most of their damage on like these lip baits, and they fish the surface a lot. They fish a lot of wake baits, and they fish shallow crankdowns and weedy reservoirs, kind of like what we have, and a lot of they're called like cranberry bogs, like shallow, really clear cranberry ponds, or old cranberry ponds.
Nice.
That have giant bass in them. Well, I'd say you catch about 40% of your fish off a point, like on like a striper here off a point, or like a wall, and then the other 60% of them are just out in like a bowl, like in a base, like this little, like this bowl, like all these points, like that point, this point, and that point. That point's super long. That point goes out past where his kayak is. And they all just drop into like a kill bowl, like right here. And like really late in the fall, I'll just launch right here and just do circles right here. And just tear them up.
So this is the rig that I have that I brought, and I only brought one rod, and it's my swim bait rod.
Yeah.
It's a St. Croix 7'11", heavy power, moderate fast action. I forget what the braid is. I think it's probably 50-pound braid, and I'm just directly, you know, I got a little snap there.
Yeah.
I just had the A-rig on that when I was fishing with Kevin Brook down at Dyson. I'm curious to learn what your rig is for throwing some of these baits.
So I'll grab I'm gonna grab that one with the, do this one, and then the one with the white handle.
Okay.
I've got like 4 to 5 rods I use on a pretty much like a daily fishing expedition basis that covers everything I need to cover with big baits. And if you want to truly have like a lot of different styles of big baits and a lot of different applications, 4 to 5 rods. 5 is like, you really only need 3, but 4 is good. And then after that, I would like to have, 10 one day so I can have duplicate colors and stuff like that. But so you need a you need a 7'9", 7'10", 8 foot, like something on the I call it the smaller spectrum, but I like something shorter than a lot of these are like 8'1", 8'6", but I want something that's a little bit shorter, a little bit more control. So this one is a Patuxent rod, actually. It's built by a guy named Nick Cotter. He used to live around here. He lives in Florida now, but he builds custom rods, and he does a phenomenal job. And that's a pretty popular thing in the swimbait world. A lot of guys have got custom rods, but they all pretty much accomplish the same mission. And this is a Century blank, so this is a 1 to 6 ounce rod. Like I said, it's a little bit shorter. So this is kind of like my workhorse rod. And I like that because it's a 7'9" and it's a 1 to 6, so I can throw anything from a small wake bait to a medium to large size glide. And the fact that it is 7'9" and it's not 8.5 foot like a lot of big rods, or 8'3" or something. If I'm fishing out of the kayak or on the shore or something, then I can get into tighter spots a lot.
It's manageable.
Yeah, and it's all around just good blank that it's got enough tip and enough backbound to do it all. You got braid on here, but it looks like you go to the fluorocarbon leader. I do have a braid to leader on there. That's a huge question everyone asks, is what kind of line.
You have a Duolock snap on the front. Does that do something for your...
With lipped baits, no matter what lipped bait it is, I always would want to have either a split ring or a snap.
Okay.
Whichever one works best for you. You'll find sometimes that certain split rings or certain snaps are going to hinder the bait. Like a snap might get stuck on the bill, a split ring might get stuck in the eye. So whichever one seems to pair best for the bait you're using is better. And that's any bait with a lip, you're going to want a snap. Now, as far as you'll notice here, I've got braided leader on that rod. This is my spoon rod. And then I've actually got a 20-pound co-poly on there. It's Iser line. It's like Maxima or P-line CXX kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it's basically a monofilament. I've got 25-pound fluorocarbon on this rod.
Right.
And then on this rod, I've got 80-pound braided line, straight braided line with no leader.
Okay.
So
you're all over the place.
Yes, you really can use any line that you want if it makes sense for the application. And I can't preach that enough, because there's a lot of information online that'll tell you have to use mono or you have to use braid and it has to be this pound test or that. It's not true. I would say if you're starting out, the most forgiving by far is going to be a 20 to 25 pound monofilament. It's going to work for all the baits well enough or great. For a lot of baits it'll work really well. For a lot of baits it'll work okay, but it'll still get the job done. But mono is not going to pop baits off on the cast as often. It's got so much stretch. It's very abrasive resistant.
So what you're talking about is where you get a backlash and it stops short, and because of the weight of the bait, it breaks your line and you've lost the bait.
That's one way to cast off. The most common way that I'll cast off, and I'm terrible. I cast off more than I should, because I try to get away with things like lighter line than I should or whatever. And, you just be loading up and it'll pop right here and the bait will just fly 10 foot away.
Right.
And that's the worst kind of cast off, because it just lands right over there and you have to watch it sink to the bottom.
Right.
You can never get there quick enough.
Yeah.
But mono is very forgiving.
Maybe you can get there quicker now.
Yeah. Turn on the Torqeedo. But mono will not pop baits off just loading up, as frequently. It might happen once a year on a freak thing.
Right.
Fluorocarbon, you got to retie every 30, 40 minutes. You got to be on top of it. You should retie it every fish. It's just not as forgiving with the stress it goes through. It's too brittle. Braid is
straight braid.
Braid is a really, really, really good option that a lot of people they don't like, because you can cast off.
Right.
Now, like you're saying, you have 50-pound braid on here. I typically wouldn't go lower than 65 personally. Because you have, you know, it's a very heavy line, but the diameter is so small. And when the diameter is small, you know, you get a loop over in the spool, like you were saying, and then you get that abrupt stop, and it's like snapping the belt, you know, just and off goes the bait. But if you do 65-pound test for baits within a 1 to say 3.5 ounce range, you truly could cast very hard, have an abrupt stop, and not break the bait off.
Right.
If you go above 3.5 ounces, you will break the bait off if you have an abrupt stop. So then you can go up to 80 pound, and 80 pound is like rope, you know, you can cast pretty much anything up to say 6 ounces, have an abrupt stop, and it probably won't break off. It could, but it will. Now, the good thing about braid is if you're a shore fisherman and you just started, you know, getting into swim baits, and you bought your first $100 lure and you're fishing somewhere like Rocky Gorge and there's a lot of rocks and stumps that you can get stuck on, if you want to, you can use light wire hooks, or you could use bronze hooks, adjust your drag so you don't bend the hooks out on fish.
So if you hook into a piece of wood, it's going to bend the hook out, you get your bait.
You can bend a lot of hooks out with straight 65, 80 pound braid, which is a valid thing to think about if you're fishing from the shore, or if you know, just spent your first $100 on a lure and you want to do everything you can to protect it. The thing to think about the most is if a bass sees that bait swimming through the water column and he wants to get it, he's going to get it. If he gets the hooks, he gets the hooks. You know, that's what we always say as a joke. If he gets the hooks, he gets the hooks. The last thing he thinks about is what kind of snap is on there, what kind of line it's, you know, attached to. 90% of these fish you're going to catch on a big swim bait. You're going to pull up to a prime spot, like going past this flat here behind us. You know, if we were going to catch a fish here, we would know it within 5 minutes. So that's another thing that's important why we can get around the lake is it's a very unique way of fishing where you don't sit very long. You know, if it kind of takes a lot of the guesswork out of it. It's almost like a handicap in a way where you know they're going to be there very fast.
Right.
You know if they're going to eat. You know, so
you're not going to sit on a spot and continually pound it with casts.
No.
Having faith that it's either going to happen right away or it's not.
All right, so this is the paperweight, which is a glide bait, and it's a very reactive glide bait. So I'm going to show you guys just exactly what you need to do to be successful with this. So first of all, I would recommend using a fast gear reel or at least a medium gear reel with a large spool. For example, this is a 6/4-1, but it's got enough line pickup and spool size where it works. I do wish it was a little faster though. So a 7 or an 8 even is ideal. Now, the difference between a glide bait like this one or this one in particular is you're not gonna ever just reel it straight in slowly. If you want to, you know, do that kind of style of gliding, you're gonna want to find a different bait that's better suited for that. And I make one that's better suited for that, and a lot of other companies do as well. This is for more reactive fishing fast, like you'll see here. So I'll make a cast. You know, always let the bait settle and level out in the water, and then we're gonna fish it at a pretty quick pace. You know, shad, which is what we're imitating today, they're moving fast. So we want to keep this thing diving and turning and gliding all day. And the way I do this, and we can watch the reel on this one, is instead of just going slow like this, so you're not going to get a great action out of the bait, you're going to do these turns of the reel and you know, feel the way that the bait's moving and watch the bait if you can see it, and just learn the bait and learn what kind of turns make it do what you want it to make it do. So it's all about the manipulation of the reel, or in some cases a reel and twitching the rod, almost like you're fishing a jerk bait. Now we'll do this when we want to fish the bait lower in the water column and keep it out of sight. We'll actually use the rod to dive the bait down, and even though it's not swimming level, diving it is a very, very good reactive tool, and it gets a lot of bites. So it's something that you control what the bait does, which is why it's so much fun, because it's not mindless. You know, you're not just turning the reel handle all day. It's you know, you could get no bites doing this and still have a great time just because you're so in tune with the bait and you're. So this is the hater, and it comes in a few different models. I'll give you the basic rundown on it. It's a 7-inch, 2.5 ounce, 1, 2, 3 piece lipped swim bait. We call these crank downs. A lot of you guys have probably never seen something like this before, or if you have, you know it's kind of a new thing in the market. You know, the crank down is a very special bait because it's got every quality that a wood crankbait or a balsa, you know, a balsa crankbait, a handmade crankbait, every quality of those baits, the reactiveness, the deflection on cover, and the, you know, the appealing swims that they have, it's got all that in a bigger size. Now the real reason that this isn't just a one-piece deal like, you know, a crankbait would be, is that once you start getting something this big, if this was one piece, it would have this crazy wide, you know, unappealing wobble to it. So that's why we got to break these down into segments. You know, if you see a small crankbait swim, it's got that nice tight, you know, erratic wobble and whatnot. And by putting these segments into this bait, I get the same appealing swim, you know, so to speak, out of the bait. And that's what the design of the bait comes from. You can see it's got a round body that's got a nice taper here to this flare. You know, moves the water well. The fish can feel it in their lateral line. It's got a nice thump. It's a very buoyant material that counteracts the action of the lip and puts a lot of vibration in the rod. The standard models would be this, you know, round lip version here and this square lip version here. And you can see I've caught a lot of fish on this one. This one's brand new. This is a waking and shallow cranking model. So this is one that's gonna go a foot to 2 foot under the surface on a, you know, fast moderate retrieve and dive a little bit, and on a slow retrieve it's going to wake right on the surface. These round lip ones are going to dive, you know, 3 to 6, you know, maybe 7 foot down, and you're going to fish both of these like crankbaits, you know, just bang them into stuff. And then I also have a new model called the Hate 15, and this is a deep diving version that'll get down 15 foot. And I think that this is, at all the cool baits, that this is probably the future of swim bait fishing, and probably will be one of the last phenomenons in bass fishing, is putting these big swim baits down to the depth where the big ones actually live more often than they are up shallow. And we're going to show you how the standard crank down hater swims. You know, it's a great starter bait because it's very easy to fish. Unlike the glides where they take a lot of manipulation, you know, this you can just reel it right in and get a nice wobble and a nice action just by reeling it in, just like a crankbait. You can do that. You can reel it and pause it and let it float and do it again and let it sit there and do a stop and go kind of retrieve. You can crank it quickly, you know, let it kind of dive down and hunt and get down there. You could even throw it at a target and just kind of twitch it and make it dance like a little jerkbait. And reel it and stop it and twitch it again. And or if you're over some grass or something, you could just creep it real slow, like just under the surface. Look at this ball of shad right here, Jeff. It's just a dark cloud.
Can you cast on top of them?
That's just how I'm gonna do it without telling. I was just cranking here over this little saddle, and the boat's in like, there wasn't like 2 foot of water. And I pulled it up over, and I looked down, and I got a nice 38, 40-inch muskier pike, just the nose right on the bait, about to eat it. He went under the boat, so he's probably somewhere over here now, but pretty exciting. One of the weird things about throwing swim baits to me is a lot of times, you know, I go out and, you know, burn up a lot of bank cover, a lot of water, and that, you know, that works. You're bound to run into a dumb one eventually. But on a day like today, I got my mindset really on hunting a big one, and I don't really think about it like fishing as much as I think about it like hunting. Right now we're gonna, you know, we're not gonna make a lot of casts today. We're gonna sneak into spots like we're about to right now, and we're gonna set up the boat perfectly to get the right angle, and we're not gonna make a whole lot of casts, you know, because the casts that we are gonna make are gonna count, and they're gonna be well calculated, and we're either gonna get bit or we're not, and we're gonna hero or we're gonna zero. So right now what I'm doing is I got the trolling motor, you know, medium to low speed. I don't want to make a whole lot of noise. I'm riding this right hand side of the cove, and where I think a big one might be sitting is right here somewhere on this secondary point. So I'm gonna sneak all the way down and around and put the boat right up on the bank, instead of just pulling up right there and putting the boat maybe on top of the fish and casting at the point. We're gonna put the boat on the point, and we're gonna cast out past the fish, and then we're gonna use these big baits to get the interest of the fish, and they're gonna follow the bait up the point, and once they realize that they're getting in shallower water and the bait's getting in shallower water, look at all this shad right there. That they're gonna make a decision, and hopefully it's the one that ends up with it in the boat. All right, we're gonna do something, little trick of the old, out of the old hat here. Ignore the sandwiches. Go in here, my little box of goodies. This is like one of the best ways to take any swim bait and just adjust on the fly. You get a little bay sinker, bank sinker, casting sinker. They got a bunch of different names, but it's just a little teardrop shape with it's got like a brass tie. And you can do this to a lot of different baits. You can do this to glides, you can do this to lip baits to make them suspend. You can do this to all kinds of stuff. It works really well on the glides because the glides are very weight sensitive, and just a little bit of added weight will make a big difference. So we're gonna just kind of pop this on this split ring right here. Try not to get any hooks in my finger. There we go. And just put it right on the split ring. And the idea is we're gonna try and fish these deeper than you normally would. We're gonna try and fish them in like 15 foot because the sun's high and the water's clear, and it doesn't seem like they want to come up right now. So we're gonna be a little more patient and let this front weight pull the nose of the bait down, get down to the bottom, let the line sink a little bit, and then at least for the first half the cast be able to keep it in their face a little bit better. And that's all it is. So it's been a tough day. It is fall, and what we're running into today is a lot of open water, you know, pelagic style feeding with these fish. And I don't have my electronics hooked up on the boat right now, but you know, the cool thing about out here where we're at is there's a lot of visual feeding going on, a lot of schooling, and there's so much gizzard shad from this year's spawn out here right now, and you know, most of them are about that big, so it can make that big swim bait bite kind of tough, you know, if they're not shallow. Today was really sunny,
probably, you know, held them out from being shallow today in a place where we could intercept them with the swim baits. So now we're in backup mode. We're gonna try floating around while these schools are getting chased and messed with, and see if we can't spoon or spook one up and get lucky.
Well, sun's almost down, and unfortunately we've not caught any, but I got what I wanted out of the day, which was Victor's tutorial on how to fish this, the paperweight, this, the hater, and this, the baby hater. And I know I have some days coming up before the end of the year. I'm going to be in some places where I can put these baits, especially down south. I know I got a trip to Alabama and one to Georgia before the end of the year, where this cadence of this big shad bait is, you know, it's going to be put me in a position to catch a size fish that, you know, I just don't know that we have that much of here in Maryland. So Victor, I appreciate the tutorial. You got some cool baits you're making, and appreciate the invite to come fish with you today, man.
Yeah, no problem, dude.